I am so happy to have you. And the first question I want to really ask you is talking about your own personal hormone transition story, your own
Yeah.
personal menopause story, and
Yeah.
menopause because you skipped Perry, would you say,
Pretty
for the
much,
most part.
yeah, I
Yeah.
can talk about it. Yeah. Yeah, so just a little bit about kind of my story. I am a registered dietitian and a certified diabetes educator, and I had always been very terrified about menopause. And the reason I was terrified was just seeing my mom. It just seemed like she was really suffering. Also, like the hot flashes, I just remember her opening the freezer and just being like, I'm having a hot flash. And it just seemed to like take over her and be really intense. And that seemed very scary. And it was something like, I think until recently, it didn't feel like people really talking about it. I didn't even know, like, was my mom in early menopause? Was this normal timing? Like, I thought it was early, but come to find out when I started asking her questions, she's like telling me the age, and it was around like, I don't know, 50-ish. So it seemed like more regular timing or typical timing. But for me, what happened was during the pandemic, I was 38, 37, 38 at the time. And I did notice like my periods were becoming a little bit more chaotic. Like I would have a period that seemed to last a really long time, and then I would have a period that, or like I would skip a couple periods, or like they would come really frequently. It was just really chaotic. As well as I remember it like it was yesterday. We went to Hawaii and it was October, and I was getting off of the plane, and all of a sudden I just got so hot. I was like, get this like jacket off me. Cause you know, the plane, like I always have extra layers because it's
Always. He's
cold.
always cold.
I'm like, get this off of me. Oh my gosh, like the sweater, I'm so hot. Just out of nowhere, literally that day. And I was like, that's weird. Okay, maybe I was just hot. But then it just continued where I was like, I couldn't even wear clothes anymore. Like at home, I was so hot all the time. I also, like sleeping wise, was drenched in sweat. And I never was one to like sleep with the AC on or anything like that. But I was like, it has to be on like 50. And my husband's like, what is happening? So I was sleeping with the AC on. I would be like completely naked and like no covers on me, still drenched in sweat. I was like, this is a little weird. Like maybe it's my thyroid because I also have like Hashimoto's, which is autoimmune where your body attacks to your thyroid, and as well as like hypothyroidism. So I went and like got all that checked out, and it was fine. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, maybe
So
you were taking too much medication and you were headed towards hyper. So it's kind of a symptom of
yes.
hyper where you're like hot and clammy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I thought. And
Yeah.
my best friend, she's a nurse in endocrinology. So she was like, no, it has to be the thyroid. Because this was not even on our radar. You
Right.
know, it's
Because
like
you're doing the math.
37.
You're like, I'm not
Yeah.
50.
I'm like,
I'm not
right.
48.
I'm like, well, I mean, pandemic, of course, like that changed a lot of lifestyle stuff for me. I got really burnt out. So I wasn't doing as much, but I felt like I was pretty healthy. Like nothing had really changed drastically. So that was one thing. Then me and my husband, we were never really like definitely wanting to have kids, but we were like, well, we're like trying, not trying, and nothing's happening. So should we like go and see if there's something more going on? Like maybe one of us has something going on. So that's when we went to the reproductive endocrinologist, like fertility. And that was a shock to me because I was like, I was just thinking, like, of course I have great fertility. I have no kids, by the way. But I was like, of course, like, how could I not? And also, too, I was like, I don't know, my siblings all have kids. So that's when she was like, you have, oh gosh, I wish I remember the exact details of what the labs were. But essentially, I think it was AMH was like 0.01, as well as, and you can cut this out because I'm trying to remember. What is the name for like is it the eggs? Is that what it's called?
The follicles. So
The
you're,
follicles. Okay,
yeah.
yeah, sorry.
Hmm.
Can you
Absolutely.
as well as like very few follicles, like maybe one or two. And I didn't really honestly take it that seriously because I was like, oh, well, that's weird. I'm shocked, but like I didn't know that that
What
had
that meant.
anything what that
Yeah.
meant. Yeah,
Hmm.
the doctor was just
Yeah. No
like,
one tells you that
yes.
menopause is the end of your follicle supply. Like
Yeah.
that's what menopause is. Like you
Right.
wind down to the end of your follicles, and that's menopause.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
had no
And so that
clue.
was happening.
That was happening like very early for me.
Yeah. So you had like a mini perimenopause,
Like
basically, in a
3 weeks.
sense.
And
Some
I'm
women,
just
it's
like,
12 years. For you, you're
yeah,
like,
I'm
let's go
like, this
knock
is
this
three
out.
weeks, and then all of a sudden I have nothing. And so even then, again, the doctor didn't really explain to me what that
Yeah.
meant. So I'm like,
No.
okay, like I'm
Well,
fine,
because
like
she's thinking in terms of fertility. So
exactly.
she's not thinking, and that's
Yeah,
a different department,
yeah,
which is
that's a different
heartbreaking,
department.
right?
I
She's like, I'm in
know.
fertility. I don't talk menopause. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Even though like, she was a reproductive endocrinologist. So
Yeah.
from there, she's like, well, if you want to have kids, you need to be in here yesterday. And I was like, well, I don't even know if I want to have kids. I'm just kind of here to see if there's anything wrong. So
And that
I
wasn't
was,
helpful, by the
it
way.
wasn't, it was like, you need to, and then she's like jumping to like donor egg. I was like, whoa.
Right. Well, I mean, because then, that's the store you went to. Right. And so
Yeah.
these are the offerings that she's
Those
got.
were the offerings,
Yeah.
exactly. I'm like, well, I'm still on the fence. She's like, you don't have time to be on the fence. So, but basically, she was like, you pretty much have like a 1% chance of having a baby.
Yeah.
And so because I was always on the fence anyway, I know there's a lot of women who it's like, oh my gosh, that's like tragic news
Absolutely.
night. My heart goes out. For me, it was difficult because I mean, not that I was like 100% about kids, but just to have the option kind of taken away, that was hard.
Yeah. Without permission.
Without permission,
And
without
because
having
you
a
didn't get a heads
warning.
up at like 30 or
Yeah, I
35, and like you didn't
know.
know, and your siblings had kids, and there was no reason
Yeah.
to suspect. And it sounds like your cycle was pretty regular until it
Yeah.
abruptly wasn't.
Yes, exactly. So I'm just thinking everything's fine.
Yeah.
So then the hot flashes were just out of control. The cycle felt like it was kind of not even really there. And I went to 8 doctors trying
Wow.
to figure out what was going on and nobody knew anything. They're just
Oh
like
gosh. I'm
it
so
was
sorry.
really sad. And it was to the point where I was like, not that I was suicidal, but where I was like, this is like a horrific quality of life. I cannot, because I wasn't sleeping, as you know, like you don't sleep.
You
And I
don't
tell
sleep.
my friends, like, I didn't sleep for a year. And they're like, oh, yeah, haha, nobody slept during the pandemic. I was like, no, like, I literally, like, I even got a sleep coach. I did acupuncture. I was like, maybe it's the exercise. Like, maybe I need to exercise more. I don't know what it is. And so finally, a doctor was like, I think you need to get a referral to another endocrinologist this seems off. So then I got that referral to an endocrinologist. I'll always remember her. I was like, she changed my life. I believe her name is Jessica Chan. She's at Cedars-Sinai. I was living in LA at the time. And she was the one who was like, you have primary ovarian insufficiency. Like,
Mhm.
this is a very
I'm
easy,
surprised. It's amazing to me how many people missed
I know,
that
eight.
pe- I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm so sorry.
Thank
Like
you.
the symptoms were there. It was so
Everything was
clear.
there.
And
Yeah.
the reproductive, and I mean, she's like, you don't have that many eggs left.
Yeah. It's
That's,
like one.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
instead of being 38, that's like 48. Like those are
Right.
48-year-old eggs kind of
Yeah.
situation. The information was clearly there.
Yeah.
So I'm so sorry that
Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, I was there. And so that changed my life
Mhm.
because I saw hope. Because I
Yeah,
just thought, like,
absolutely.
this is my life. Like, what is this? I can't even leave the house because I can't put clothes on. It was too hot. And I'm like, well, this is the end of like the life that I knew. And so then she got me on HRT. I
Yep.
remember it was like May 2022. And then that changed everything. So I did an estrogen patch, I did progesterone, and I still am tweaking it like
I
up
bet.
until this day, right? And then also testosterone as well. And I feel like 2 years later, or is it 2 years, almost 2 years later,
Mhm.
I finally am starting to feel like on a good path. Like the hot flashes went away like almost within a month or two.
Mhm.
But yeah, I'm feeling like just myself again. I also like the brain fog. That was another symptom for me. Also, it's like I struggle with even talking about the weight part of things because I am a dietitian and I do focus on body inclusivity as well as just health at every size and being very weight inclusive and trying to accept yourself where you are. And also, it was pretty difficult to have, overnight your weight change significantly, even though you felt like nothing was changing. It's just hard change
Well,
in
a lot
general.
changed.
Yeah. Well,
Losing those
exactly.
hormones.
Yeah, but like before that, I wasn't really sure. Like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm doing the same things for the most part. And so there was that. And then also, which is something I wanted to talk about today that I mentioned, was also the pre-diabetes. So kind of
Yeah.
getting thrown into that pre-diabetes, even though myself, I'm a dietitian, I'm a diabetes educator. I help patients with this. Like, what is going on? Why am I struggling so much with doing the same things? And all of a sudden, I'm like, manage
Mhm.
how it normally was with, not making as much of an effort. So that's kind of my story.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was difficult. And now I just want to, share this information with as many women as possible so they're not scared, so that they get intervention sooner and get to the bottom of what's going on.
I so appreciate it. We need to be having more conversations with women who are in their 30s and maybe even early 40s and maybe potentially even 20s. Women who have, primary ovarian insufficiency go into what we call premature menopause, right?
Yeah.
Where way earlier than we were expecting, way earlier than your body wanted to,
Yeah.
and what are the implications of that?
Right.
metabolically, brain wise, inflammation. And then and whether it's medical menopause, or it is chemical menopause, or, it's POI, whatever it may be,
Yeah.
then how do we navigate that? And I would say that overall, heartbreaking enough, we don't do a great job there. But I'm so grateful that whoever you found immediately put you on HRT,
Yes.
because your body's like, excuse me,
Where's the estrogen?
estrogen is the master regulator of the brain. Hot
Yeah.
flashes are brain derived. Those
Yes.
are where they're coming from. Night sweats, brain derived.
Yeah.
And that's the brain saying, where the heck is my estrogen? Where is the kind of the master fuel source of my function? And
Yeah.
so losing that, even I will tell you that losing estradiol in the brain at any time, whether you're 38, 42, 48, 55, I don't care. The brain doesn't, again, in a lot of ways without permission, the brain doesn't love it. And
Yeah.
that's why we see things like metabolic issues, or we see inflammation in the brain, dementia, Alzheimer's. We start to
Yes.
see all these issues. But the sooner we lose that estradiol, and we're not tended to appropriately,
Yeah.
like someone, we're not given, those life-giving hormones, especially when we're supposed to still have them, we really feel it. And so
100%. Yeah. And I did, and you mentioned inflammation. Like I just saw it also. Like, you could just kind of
you
look at
can
people
feel it.
sometimes
Yeah,
and
you can
you
tell.
see it's like you look, I mean, and I hate to, but
Red or
sometimes I'll
puffy or just, yeah.
exactly. That's like in my face. It just
Mhm.
looked just not myself. I'm like, what is, and this is when I didn't know at all. And I'm like, what happened? Literally like overnight, like I just don't look like myself. Yeah, just super. And then also the lab results showed it too,
Yeah.
just like a cry. And I'm still, it's
Well,
just
with
kind of,
Haji's as well, you think about,
yes. Yeah.
you know, I have Hashimoto's as well. And I always
Okay.
tell people I didn't come into perimenopause with a clean bill of health. I had inflammatory markers that had been
Yes,
out of
I do
range,
too. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so, coming perimenopause, or kind of, or menopause, losing those hormones, whether they never go out quietly or
Yeah.
gently, no matter where it
Yes.
happens, it's going to be an erratic experience. But the decline of those hormones, no matter how it happens, is going to increase our inflammation. And
Yeah.
if we're already going in with a little bit of inflammation, it kind of just, what I call ratchets, like it just brings it up to the next level. And so
Yeah.
looking at those inflammatory markers as early as your 30s, highly sensitive C-reactive protein,
Yep.
antibodies, that
Yeah.
really
That's
gives you,
high.
and homocysteine, fibrinogen, sed
Yeah.
rate, especially cardiovascular health, and then fasting insulin, hemoglobin
Yeah.
A1C. All of these to me are inflammatory markers that really paint a picture of what's going on. And so you felt it, but also you saw it on the labs.
I saw those. Yeah. The ones that they did test, like the highly sensitive C-reactive protein, homocysteine, the fasting insulin, A1C, like all those were out of range. And it was, yeah, it was like shocking to me because again, I felt like
Yeah.
my life, I was walking a
No,
lot.
we're not looking at that stuff at their
Yeah,
30s. Like a lot of doctors won't
no,
even run those labs to be,
yeah,
unfortunately, in our
yeah,
30s. Like the 40, they're like, okay,
yeah.
let's start to look at things. But yeah, I'm sure that I mean, I don't even know if you had to demand those, or.
Yeah, well, I went to Parsley Health. I don't know if you've heard of them,
I
but
have,
they're more
yeah.
functional
Yeah, they
doctors and
are. Yeah.
they're really
So they're
trying to
willing
like,
to run a full panel.
yeah, they
Yeah.
ran a full panel. And I also currently go to MIDI, which
Maybe.
they focus on just peri and menopause. And they're the ones who have been fine tuning kind of my HRT in a way that's been super helpful and well, in addition to other stuff, which I'll talk about, but like got the labs more within a target range for me. And so you kind of have to just like maybe step outside of the box when it comes to not to say traditional providers aren't great, but like just someone who knows what's going on. And
Yeah.
sometimes the traditional ones don't always get that education on what is happening. So just like finding people who specialize in menopause, women's health, like that can be like life changing.
Absolutely. I'm so grateful that you've got a team that you feel confident with and comfortable
Yeah.
with, that is helping to, it's, especially in this, whatever journey we're all in, whether it's perimenopause and HRT, early menopause and HRT, or even post menopause, it's not just about symptom management. It's about functional management. Like
Yeah.
that that your levels, your numbers look good. So all of that needs to be managed. Because, yeah, I mean, you can take a little bit of estrogen and get those hot flashes under control, but are we addressing the inflammation? Are we
Yeah.
addressing the muscle loss? Are we addressing the blood, the glucose metabolism, that intolerance that's been created due to the loss of those hormones? And, so often it's just about symptom management. But when it comes to whole body functional health, it's so much more than that. Because I'll tell you what, prediabetes, I'm a lot more concerned about that than I am about those hot flashes, although those are really disruptive, extremely
Yeah.
disruptive. And
Yeah.
one could argue that those are connected to blood glucose issues as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think, so many of us also have like family histories
Yeah.
of diabetes, as do I. And you mentioned like Alzheimer's and, dementia and all of those things. And so just really wanting to take a proactive approach, which of course we know not everybody with prediabetes will develop diabetes. However, I think when you have a lot of the risk factors, right? So me being a Black woman, as well as the strong family history, it being, well, I'm not over 45, but I feel like my hormones are like over 45 years of
Well,
age.
hopefully they're
Yeah,
more
they're better.
optimized.
Yeah, they were.
Hopefully they're
Um,
39-year-old hormones or
they're
40-year-old hormones.
41. But so yeah, I just, even me as like the diabetes educator dietitian, I wasn't taught the connection between pre-diabetes and these changes that happen midlife, which is insane that
Mhm.
I'm just kind of like researching that on my own. And now is part of my nutrition telehealth practice that we only focus on diabetes and pre-diabetes. These are part of our screening questions, especially women in midlife, to see like, are you having these symptoms? Okay, like when should we refer you out to see if there's something else going on to help you get your hormones optimized? Because you can take a multifaceted approach, right? Like hormones, building that muscle mass, as well as nutrition, and obviously like sleep and stress. So it has completely just changed the way that I practice nutrition as a dietitian as well. And I'm
Yeah.
hoping to just spread the word to as many people where they go in and nothing's changed, and all of a sudden your labs are looking different. And even me, never in my life had the cholesterol elevated. Cholesterol is also elevated. So just we need to check these numbers when
Absolutely.
indicated. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, and this is kind of how I look at, and I'm really curious how you think about this. How I look at diabetes and prediabetes is that it's both diabetes, to be honest. Mainly because I know that we don't look at a lot of diabetes for women as we do for men, and so when I see fasting insulin, above. I'm looking to keep it under 6. If I see a fasting blood glucose, around 100 milligrams per deciliter, I know I'm not so much concerned about heading into diabetes as much as I'm concerned about the cardiovascular risk. And that we know that if women are in the lower hundreds, not 125 or 126 milligrams per deciliter, but because those are real, that's where kind of men really get into trouble. But for us as women, our cardiovascular health becomes more at risk around 106, 108. And so you don't have to be full blown diabetes to start to see cardiovascular issues. And this is where I'll start to see those cardiovascular inflammatory markers go out. I'll start to see ApoB go up. I'll start to see lipids go into unfavorable directions. And so I'm curious, when you're educating, are these the types of things you're looking at as well? Like, I'm trying to keep all women as fast as possible out of the pre-diabetic range.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it also depends on where the person's coming from. Like
Sure
obviously if
thing.
someone's working with us, I will say majority of our patients are in that prediabetes range, and then we have a lot, I would say like 30% prediabetes, and then we have type 2 diabetes and type 1
Mhm.
diabetes. And then 10% actually also have PCOS, which it's all related as
It's all
well.
insulin resistant. I
It's
mean, it's,
yeah,
yeah, insulin
it's
resistance driven,
yeah, and so
unless it's type 1, obviously, autoimmunity.
yeah, exactly. And so it really depends on where someone's coming from. Like our goal is to meet people where they're at, right? Everybody is in a different place. And I think everyone's goals are different. And sometimes their doctor like will kind of follow their guidance when it is, if someone does have type 2 or type 1, like we'll follow the doctor's guidance on what the target range is. Like, we know when people are older, sometimes those ranges are loosened a little bit. So it really is individualized. But of course, our goal is to get people's A1C, ideally, if they are coming in with prediabetes, get it outside of that prediabetes range. But also, I will look at it as a success if we can keep it stable for a long period of time, too. Because not everyone is going to, some people of our patients, and not many, but some, like they will make a lot of changes. And it stays stable. And so just also celebrating it
For
not going
sure.
up can
Yeah.
be an accomplishment. So it's really individualized, and meeting people where they don't feel like they have to cut everything out, because like that's what we don't want, and we don't want to create disordered eating in people either, right? Because that also goes very hand in hand. We even have a whole track for kind of disordered eating with prediabetes, because we do have people where they're seeing online, I have to cut out all carbs, I have to, all my cultural foods, like they're not good enough. And that's not the case. Like we can focus on what can we add to the diet, right? Like how can we add more color? How can we add more plant-based foods? How can we add more exercise? Because
I was going to
exercise,
say that's
yeah,
the, to
that's,
me, I've treated a lot of pre-diabetic women as well. And, movement after meals,
yeah. And
game
that, oh my God,
changer.
that helps so much.
I
Yeah.
mean, then you can really, you can kind of, that's where you got that wiggle room, that play where,
Yeah.
you can have that dish that you love. And then you go and take a walk, or you knock out some squats, or you walk those stairs. There's so much, at least to me, like, and I've looked at CGMs readings, oh my gosh, for years now. And that to me, not that nutrition isn't a big player here, big time, and
Yeah.
sleep and stress 100%, but that movement, that is the lever to pull, I have
Yeah.
found.
And we share that with patients too, because you'd be so surprised. That's why we're big fans of CGMs. Like
Yeah,
we
man,
want all of our
game
patients
changer.
to be on CGMs, which is, for people who don't know, it stands for continuous glucose monitor. And it's a way to see what's happening with your blood sugar in real time, and to see how your unique body responds to things. Because I've worn CGMs on and off, and even especially recently, as thankfully I've gotten out of the pre-diabetes range.
Congrats.
Combination of like exercise, nutrition, and HRT changes, like increased estrogen for me.
Hmm.
But the CGMs helps you see like, oh, I can have, I can eat a big plate of pasta and have a lot of olive oil on it. And for me personally, like my blood sugar stays stable, right? But like somebody else, it might be a different combination. And so there might be things that are very intuitive that, it's like, okay, I have a carb, I have a protein, and I have a veggie. And it's like that intuitively will keep your blood sugar stable. There's some
But
things that are not intuitive, like,
no, yeah,
and I think it's helpful. I think we're in an age of individualization where we want to know how your unique body responds. And so our dietitians will sync up to your CGM so we can see the data, we can test things with you. And again, we focus on exercise and nutrition and trying to help you build that lean muscle mass, which is going to help regulate your blood sugar better overall. So
yeah.
that's kind of where we like to kind of tune in.
Yeah, I mean, it is very bio-individual as I've looked over the years. And I come up from a family of diabetes. My sister's pre-diabetic. I have uncles and aunts and a lot of people in my life that are coming on the Mexican side of my family. And when I ran my genetics, that was the thing. It was like, okay, you need to watch your blood glucose. And I always let people know that bio-individually, I don't have a lot of wiggle room. Like, what I'm saying? I cannot eat that big old bowl of pasta. What I'm saying? Like, I don't care, even during the morning, and then sit on the couch. And so so I've learned a lot about myself personally. But, one of the things I wore one for my birthday, I turned 45 this last September.
Happy
And
birthday. Happy
thank you.
belated.
Thank you. And being Hajis and all that. So dairy free and gluten free and all, but, not sugar free. So I got this really amazing birthday cake from this really sexy baker down the way in Del Mar. And the actual day of my party, we had a big birthday party. And you're an assistant to your own birthday party. Like there's no sitting. And so I didn't even
Yeah.
get a piece of cake. But the next day I did. And
Oh, okay.
it's all good. I had some leftover. And the next day I did have it. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna, can I have my cake and eat it too? I want to see, can I keep my blood glucose in range? And I have a very optimal range that I like to keep things. I like to keep it tight. And so I was like, let me see what happens. So I ate this cake, and then I got on my bike and I took this beautiful bike ride to the beach. And it was like a 25-minute bike ride. And I like to keep my blood, like I don't want it to go over ideally I don't like to go over 112 milligrams per deciliter. Yeah, it's I know, a little extreme, but it's how I like to roll. And
Okay.
and so I got on the bike, I ate this cake, like didn't eat lunch first. It was by itself. That's one of my rules. Like, do not eat dessert snacks on their own. And then I rode my bike, and my blood glucose, it just stayed in range. And I was like, that is what I'm talking about. And it was just kind of I was like, I'm just
Yeah.
curious. Like,
Experimenting.
can I ride this off? Can I work? And it was this really nice ride, and it was so beautiful. It was right when the sun was setting. And I thought, mama can have her cake and eat it too. And I was just so happy. But again, I've been working in metabolic health and this is kind of the thing that I do all the time. And so it was more just a fun kind of experiment to see what happens.
Yeah.
I loved the fact that I was like, yeah, I get to have the cake and it doesn't, and I didn't have and I would have been okay with a bigger a blood glucose spike or a raise.
Yeah.
I would have been totally fine with that because I knew I was having the cake. Like I said yes to that. And I was excited and I loved it and I savored it. But then I also savored the bike ride and it was a double win. So
Yeah. And I also think just for physical activity, it makes you feel good. Like
yeah.
that's what I like most about it, honestly, is like, because before the call, you're like, how are you? And I said I was doing good because I just got some movement in. And again, I love I love weightlifting, but also in a gentle way. And just kind of leaning on that if that's motivating for you, that you feel good. And like you're saying, encouraging people, it's not about like cutting things out. It's about savoring things. And you can do both within like whatever your health goals are. And sometimes it is gonna, it's okay if your blood glucose goes up. And we try to help people like reduce that shame. And sometimes it's like can cause more stress, right? Like being stressed
Mm-hmm.
about the number than the number itself. So encouraging, yeah, people to just take it one day at a time and see how things affect you and figure out what your unique goals are and try to figure out like, yeah, how you can do
Yeah.
all the things that are important to you in life because we have one life and you should have the cake for your birthday and maybe for dessert. Like, who knows?
Absolutely. No, I agree. And I think, yeah, and I probably this is very similar to what you girls do in your teleclinic, which is for the first week, I just have people observe what they're,
Yeah.
just be the observer of what your continuous glucose monitor is telling you. And then week two, then we can start playing around, start experimenting to
Yeah.
kind of play with those numbers and see if we can move them in a direction that feels, more in alignment to you. So I'd love for you to share if you're open. I know there's so many things that are bio individual to each and every one of
Yeah.
your clients, your patients, but I'm curious, what was it for you? Was there something specific? I mean, so often it's the consistency, the everyday little changes and things that we do outside of wearing the continuous glucose monitor and becoming aware there. What were some of the levers for you that not only felt good and felt in alignment with what you wanted, but also moved those numbers?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think there were three things, actually four. So
Cool.
obviously one is like sleeping and getting more
Which thank
progesterone.
goodness you got to sleep like
I got
after
to
that
sleep.
year.
Yes, like, and even still struggled because what I found for me was I did better with more estrogen and continuous progesterone every day
Mhm.
versus having progesterone half the month and then not. Because I started to feel like my mental health was all over. It was just like up and down with like that drastic drop in the progesterone. So that's where MIDI came in and was like, let's try to help you. And I also wasn't tolerating it because the estrogen wasn't high enough for my age. So they're like, let's increase your estrogen so you can have the progesterone every day, take it at night, and that should help sleep. And it did. And we're kind of talking, I might increase it again a little bit.
The
So that was number
progesterone.
one. Yeah, the
And were
progesterone.
you so what you're talking about? So after kind of playing with it, what you were cycling progesterone initially with
Yes.
continuous estrogen with the estradiol
Yeah,
patches,
exactly.
but then again that fallout of progesterone because you probably was it 100 milligrams, 200
It was
milligrams,
200.
200. Okay, and you just
All
fell
of
off
them,
a
but yeah,
cliff once you just stopped taking
fell
it.
off a cliff.
Yeah,
And I'm like,
yeah,
what is going
yeah.
on?
No,
And
yeah,
so that's where okay, so that's helps sleep. And then
yeah,
that helps also stabilizing my mood. Because
yeah,
before I knew
absolutely.
what was going on, I was like, am I going crazy? I couldn't, like, I was crying in meetings all the time. I was like, but not just like tearful, like hyperventilate, like just, I was not stable, which I'm sure so many people can relate to.
Control me. I can
Yeah,
totally
just like
relate.
you're not like, what is going on? And then also just feeling like completely burnt out, like the same amount of work, I could not handle it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm a worker bee, And of course, like I'm an elder millennial, so a little bit of that, we have a little of that toxic girl boss culture, trying to get away from that. But still, like I can handle a workload and I couldn't. So that was number one, getting the hormones. Now, the second thing was looking at nutrition and increasing my protein, I will say. I do eat more plant forward and I was my muscle mass was low because I did get a DEXA scan because they told me to just check bone density and all that. And I also was able to see muscle mass and it was like pretty low. And with these changes, I did increase 10 pounds of lean muscle, which was great.
Amazing.
Yeah, so I
Go
was so happy about
you.
that. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was nice to like have something to focus on and not focus on weight, but just like adding,
Yeah.
So I increased 10 pounds of lean muscle, and how I did that was with nutrition. Obviously, I don't think I was getting enough protein before for where I was at in my life. So I was trying to get about 30 grams of protein per meal, usually like 100 grams a day. And that's where I kind of saw where the exercise, like I was able to put on that lean muscle, which I think helped with like the blood glucose regulation. So that's, adding the protein was number two, as well as trying to just incorporate more fiber rich foods to help with satiety and also fiber. There's a lot of research to support that can help with blood glucose regulation, blood glucose metabolism. So just some recs for your listener. Some things that I tried to incorporate most days was raspberries. Raspberries have 8 grams of fiber per cup. Also, cooked black beans, cooked lentils, they have a significant amount of fiber, I think around like 15 grams per cup. Chia seeds have about 10 grams per ounce. So those are easy ways, like especially women listening, we need about at least I would say 25 grams of fiber per day, but most American adults get 10 to 15. So we're lower on that. And that again will really help with the blood glucose. So trying to make sure that I got that fiber in, getting that protein in, getting carbs, right? Because carbs help too. They give you the energy to get through the day. So for me, it was making sure having the balance. And again, this is stuff that I teach to patients or we teach to patients all day, every day. But sometimes it's like, focusing on yourself, it just, I don't know, feels different. It's like, oh, I know this, but like, am I actually doing this at most days?
Well,
Like,
it's the theoretical versus like,
yeah, the
rubber meets the
application.
road. Yeah. You're,
Yeah. So it's like, just,
especially when you're like, I get my numbers.
yeah,
How,
I'm just like,
yeah.
there, whoa,
Yeah.
okay.
You're like, how
So I'm like,
is
where do
this?
I start?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Bio individual for you with your
Yes,
family history and your unique circumstances, right? Because I'm assuming you're
exactly.
taking thyroid medication too. And so like,
Yes.
is that
Mhm.
dialed? Is this dialed? Like all these things that
Yeah.
you're kind of looking at, it's your own journey.
Yeah, it's your own journey. Exactly. So looking at the nutrition and still enjoying my food. Like I'm very big on all foods can fit into a balanced diet. I'm big on pleasure is a valid reason to eat, right? But while also if my goal was, getting my blood sugar at the target that worked for me, like there were certain things I had to not necessarily change, but like you said, even if it's like, okay, I'm walking for 5 minutes after meals, that alone, walking 5-10 minutes, like after even your biggest meal of the day is extremely helpful. And that's something that there's research to support, obviously, but I would see personally on my glucose monitor, like, oh, okay, like having, going out with my husband and having the dessert and having, I don't really drink alcohol, but like having the mocktail and just us doing a walk, not only do you feel good, like mentally, and you feel better physically, like helping to digest, but also that was reflected in the blood glucose. So that's another thing. And then the strength training, really focusing on that strength training to help. And honestly, I think I just lost the lean muscle mass with the decline in estrogen, but doing the strength and I don't have the data to say though, because I only did the DEXA scan. I think it was like 2022. And then another one recently where I was like, oh, okay, I think I'm getting to a place that is helping with my blood sugar a little bit more, naturally within my body. So those were the main things that I did. And nothing crazy either with strength. I was doing like one day of upper body, but like lifting a little heavier than before, taking rest between, and then one day of lower body. And then I did one day of full body reformer Pilates. And
Nice.
that was kind of with the walking, like that was kind of enough to get those, yeah, the numbers at my target. So there's so many options for everybody. And I think this is just like what works for me. And I think it's, yeah, everyone can kind of play around with, these are the core things I think for most people, but playing around and seeing what's like the gentle formula that works well for you.
I love that. I so appreciate you sharing your full journey, the
Thank
full
you.
journey of like what is happening with me, the full
Yeah.
journey of like really the crash course on your body. And then, once you finding the right people, looking at those numbers and
Yeah.
taking such inspired action that was right for you. Because in a lot of ways, I think about the perimenopause experience where a lot of these changes happen over the course of 10 years. And for you, some of those, I mean, they just
Yeah.
not 10 years, we're talking
Quick.
like months, and how it
Yes.
just all happened so quickly. It's like an expedited journey in. And
Yeah.
then like, okay, well, now that all this has happened, how do I like navigate this? on
Yep.
the other side. And so it's such an inspiring journey. It's in such a, I hope, any woman listening to this walks away with a lot of hope of what is
Yes.
possible, how we can make these changes don't have to be drastic or massive by any means. But if,
Yeah.
from what I'm hearing from you is like, one, know your numbers, like,
Yeah.
especially when you don't think you need to know your numbers,
Yes.
and then from those, let's start integrating some of these changes that can
Yep.
really add big gains over time.
Yeah. And give yourself grace, give
Yeah.
yourself time. Like for me, it was honestly like a 2-year journey until
Yeah.
I'm finally feeling a lot better. I finally got that A1C down out of the pre-diabetes range. And not
Woohoo.
just, yay, not to say it will take 2 years, but I'm just saying give yourself
But it
time.
could.
It
It's
could.
a journey.
It's a journey. It's the
Yeah.
rest of your life. So
Yeah.
we like to think about things as sustainable because again, people come to us and they're doing these crash diets or these crash things. But everything I mentioned to you is stuff I can do forever because it didn't feel like that big of a lift for me. And so finding those things for you that make that big impact that don't feel like, oh my God, this is like, I hate doing this exercise or I
Yeah.
hate like.
Yeah. Oh, no, exactly. Like, yeah, exactly. Hate doing the exercise. Like, do I have to really do the deadlift to get my blood sugar into range? And I've worn a CGM on and off for, I think, for 4 or 5 years. And initially, it was all nutrition based that I was
Yeah.
doing and working out and all the things, just, my 60-minute workout or my 45-minute workout. And for the most part, it was good to go. But I was like, okay, well, do I have to be so strict? Do I have to, be so, I'm very disciplined and so disciplined. I was like, I mean, not that I can't do it, but maybe there's another way. And it was walking. I was like, I could
Yeah.
just walk. And my blood sugar on the CGMs over the last year, me just consistently walking through the day. I always say, walk whenever you can, however much you can. Just you
Yeah.
got 5 minutes, grab shoes and go outside and take a little walk. Or, my blood sugar was more stable walking, gently walking with
Yeah.
family, walking and voice noting friends than it
Oh, my
ever
fave.
was like just really like very strenuous diet protocol, very
Yeah.
hardcore workout. I was like, oh, tell me not to say that eating healthy isn't great, but this was more
Yeah.
extreme and working out great, amazing. But I was like, you're telling me I could have just been walking this whole time and
The
like
power
just
of
a
it.
lot more grace, and it
Yeah.
just felt so much better. And so that has been the last 2 years has been a very roller coaster healing journey too for different things.
Yeah.
And even on my worst days, even on my migraine days, like I walk because it feels so good. I love how I
Yeah.
feel. I know from my evidence on my continuous glucose monitor that it's going to be one of the best ways to keep my blood sugar stable all day long.
Yeah.
And it's for most of us, it's pretty darn easy to do.
Yeah, for most people, it is so
Yeah,
accessible. I'm right there with you. I'm a walking girly. My favorite thing is walking and voice noting.
girl. Oh,
And the
I'm
voice
working the
queen,
phones. Okay.
working the phones. I'm like, okay, we got a podcast. But what I will say that I did where I did see a lot of improvements as well with the walking was instead of trying to stress myself out of getting all of that walking in the morning, like these longer walks, which sometimes I have time, sometimes I don't. I will just 3, 4 times a day walk around the block. That's all I do. If I can have it coincide with like after a meal, I don't always though. Sometimes
Yeah,
I'm just like, I
me
don't feel
too.
like doing
Sometimes it
it
happens
today.
before,
Yeah,
sometimes it
so
happens after. Yeah, for me, it's the mini walks.
the many walks.
5 minutes, 7 minutes, 10 minutes. If
Yeah,
I can get a 20-minute, oh yeah. If
yeah,
I'm gonna go pick up my son right after this, and his pickup time is at 12:30, and we'll wrap up. I'll get there 10 minutes early. He goes
yeah.
to a nature school, so he's at a lagoon. It's so
Oh,
beautiful and it's
that's
woody and
cool.
it's gorgeous, and I'll at least get to walk for 15 minutes before picking
Yeah,
him up, and then
there
I'll
you
take him
go.
home. And so like again, it's just this little, and I love it. It's beautiful. It doesn't feel like I have to do it. It doesn't feel like, oh my gosh, if I miss that little walking window, oh no. No, it's
Yeah,
it's something that I'm walking in nature and it just feels
yeah.
delicious.
Feels so
Yeah,
delicious.
I love
Walking.
it. Walking. If there's anything I mean,
Walking.
there's so many big takeaways from this
Yeah.
episode from you and your honest, beautiful journey and your
Thank
expertise. But
you.
if anything you're walking away with in 2025 is becoming a walking girly.
Yeah.
Send your voice memos to your besties. Listen to your favorite podcast. Right now, I'm listening to Mel Robbins' book, The Let Them Theory, while I'm walking,
Okay.
and but also sending my voice memos too,
Yep.
and I just love being outside. It just
Same.
mm,
We're in California though,
yeah,
so
it's true.
I know
It's
some
true.
people are like walking, it's like snowing. But let me tell for people who are saying that, because I know there's probably those folks where, or it's like you don't feel safe or whatever it is, They do have on Amazon these like treadmills that are
Oh yeah,
100
you mean this one
bucks.
right here next to
Oh,
me?
do you
Yeah,
have? Let me see.
yeah, and it's
Okay.
it's right
A
here
hundred
next to me.
dollars
Yeah, or yeah,
or
like
less.
especially when they're on.
Yeah.
I think this one was 120 or 110. I
Yeah.
will say that it's so funny. It's collecting dust over here because I do love to just. We're
Being
in California. I
outside.
love to be
Yeah,
outside.
I
I'm
know.
a 10-minute walk to the ocean, and so. But I was thinking actually because it's in my office, and I'm thinking about taking it downstairs in the living room where I'm
Nice.
hanging out with family and I can just be walking on it. So my lesson here is that if you buy one of these, put it somewhere where you're going to use it.
Yeah, that's the thing. But it's like if you're not using because you're outside, even better,
Yeah.
like either
But if you
way.
like you have your favorite show at night after the kids are
Yeah.
asleep, bring the walking, bring it down.
Yeah.
You know, that's thinking about doing it. I always think about like walking while listening to something, walking while reading, walking while, if you're in your house and it's after dinner and you're, who cares? It doesn't matter. It's not about like if you're thinking you look silly, it doesn't matter. Like your
Yeah.
metabolism, let me tell you, it does not care. Just tell your family, like, listen, this is what I'm doing. Like y'all should do it too.
Yeah. Yeah. Listen, it really does help and it's
Mhm,
gentle on the body. So
mhm. Yeah.
walking, it works.
Yes, I love it. All right, honey. Well, where can we find you? You've got a beautiful telemedicine clinic. You've got an awesome podcast. Like,
You.
tell us where we can plug in.
Yeah, so if you are listening and you're like, okay, I have been diagnosed with prediabetes or diabetes, or you've had it for a while and you just, want some help with getting your blood glucose in range or PCOS, you can find us at diabetesdigital.co. That's diabetesdigital.co. And you can fill out our get started form. It's very quick and easy. And from there, we'll tell you if we believe you are in network because the other good thing is we take insurance. So majority of our patients don't pay anything out of pocket and many get unlimited visits. So it's incredible. And our dietitians, I say the only bad thing about working at Diabetes Digital is I can't work with the dietitians. Like we only hire based on like who we would actually want to
Mhm.
work with. They're all amazing. We all have the specialty of diabetes, pre-diabetes, but some people have different specialties, like I said, PCOS or intuitive eating or eating disorder, heart, cardiovascular issues. So you can choose your dietitian, and we have a 12 weeks to lower your A1C program. We will screen you for some of these issues that we've been talking about today and give you a recommendation for how to follow up and get more information, get those labs tested to add that to your treatment protocol. And we'll also help give you that accountability as well. So if we know that exercise is the thing that's going to help you, in addition to looking at what you're eating, will help you come up with goals and stay consistent. So diabetesdigital.co. And we also have a podcast called the Diabetes Digital Podcast that releases every other Wednesday.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, honey, for coming on.
Thank
Thank you for
you.
sharing what you're bringing to this world. And I just loved our conversation.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for watching. Now, if you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comments. And if you are ready to learn more about perimenopause and how to navigate with a lot of ease and grace, be sure to subscribe to this channel so that you can join our community. Don't forget to share this video with someone that you love, that you know is navigating the perimenopause journey as well, because they deserve to feel their best too. See you in the next video.